Hello, everyone. In this session, I want to do a deep dive into SAP UI5 adaptation projects with reference to custom freestyle Fiori applications. In a previous session, I had done a session on the basics of SAP UI5 adaptation. So if you have not seen that, definitely go ahead and watch that. So in this session, I want to start with the SAP UI5 lifecycle hooks. So you're probably already familiar with the on init, the on before rendering, the on after rendering, and the on exit lifecycle hooks. So the on init, this is fired when the view is instantiated. I like to think of an analogy for this. So let's say you're an event host and every day you're hosting an event. So for this, you have leased a room and you have bought some furniture. So this all happens only once. So it's very similarly the on init, it only gets fired once. And in this event, you typically register event handlers for UI controls. So anytime you have to register event handlers, typically do it in the on init. So this is very similar to having a financing plan for your furniture. So on the on before rendering, you can still register event handlers for UI controls if they depend on dynamic conditions. So for example, if the interest rate goes down, so you may want to refinance the financing plan for your furniture. So similarly, like if there is a dynamic condition, then you can register event handlers in the on before rendering. But typically you do the registering the event handlers in the on init. So these are the lifecycle hooks. You're already familiar with it. So the on init gets fired only once, whereas the on before rendering and the on after rendering, they get fired multiple times. Very similar to like every day you have a different event. So you're decorating the room with the furniture that you bought. So they get fired multiple times. Okay, so when you have the adaptation projects, so you have the base application and then you have the extension application. So you have two lifecycle hooks, right? So the lifecycle hook of the base application and then the extension application. So they get fired in this sequence. The base application on init gets fired first, the extension application on init gets fired next, and so on. So let's have a quick look at how this lifecycle hooks work actually. So for this, what I have is I have a base application. So this is my base application right here. And in this base application, you can see that all I have at this moment is the on init and the on before rendering, just the lifecycle hooks. And the UI is very basic. It has like 3 buttons, but right now all the event handlers are, I've commented out the code. And I also have a public method. This is going to show the public methods for this on in or for this base application. So this is my base application. So let me go ahead and deploy this to my SAP S/4HANA system. So this is my base application that is now being deployed to the SAP S/4HANA system. So now I go into my extension application itself. So on my extension application, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be overriding all of these lifecycle hooks. So if I go ahead and run this here, if I open it in open preview mode, then the execution of these lifecycle hooks, that's what I'm interested in. So let's have a quick look at how the lifecycle hooks are executed. You can see that the base on init gets fired first, and then the extension on init. And then the extension on before rendering gets fired first, and then the base on before rendering, and so on. So you can see the sequence in which the lifecycle hooks are being called. And if I also look at the public methods itself right here, right now there is no public methods from the base application, because if you look at the base application is fairly empty right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the UI itself I showed you, it has just 3 buttons. So let's look at the event handlers for these 3 buttons. So what I'm going to do for the first button, let me go ahead and uncomment all these lines of code. This is on my base application. So let me quickly show you what's happening. So button 1 handler is here, button 2 handler is here, and then the button 3 handler is here. In this, I have a console log, and then I'm calling this method called public method, and I have a defined public method here in this base application right here. And then the second one, I'm calling a method called on method, and the on method is right here. And then the third one, I'm calling it underscore private method, and underscore private method is right here. Let me go ahead and deploy this to the cloud, to my SAP S/4HANA system as well. And let's look at the public methods that are now available. So we have all these methods that I have defined here. So let's see on the extension application all the methods that I have access to. So if I go back to my extension application right now, and let me go ahead and close this and reopen it. So let me go ahead and close this guy. And I'm going to reopen this application, this extension app. So in my extension app, what I have done is I have the same name. So there was a public method in the base application, and I have also overridden with the same name called public method. And I want to see if this method gets run, or the base method or the public method in the base application gets run. Also, I have the same method called on method, and this is on my extension application. And then I have the same method called private method. So I've added the same methods in the override section. So let's see how it behaves. So if I go into my extension application, which is running right now, go into console log right here. Let me clear all these things. So the base button, when I click on this base button, you can see that the extensions public method gets run. So my extension public method is able to override the public method in the base application. Now, this is the default behavior. The default behavior is the override execution is instead. So it's able to change this, and it's able to run this method here. Now, the other thing too is because this method starts with, it does not start with on or init or exit or underscore. This is considered a public method, and it's able to run this. Let's go to the second button. If I click on this second button right here, you can see that the base on method is being run. Even though on my extension app I have the on method, because it starts with the on, this is considered a private method, and it's not a and it doesn't override it. And then the third button again, you can see that the base private method is run because it starts with underscore. So even though I have the same method in the override section, so it's not the base application considers this as a private method. Same thing with the on method as well. But there is a small caveat though, and I don't know if this is a bug or not. So in my base application, right now, I don't have a metadata section. So the base application dictates what can be overridden. So in my base application right now, I don't have a metadata section. Because I don't have a metadata section, anything that starts with underscore or on or init or exit, they're all considered as private methods. So you can look at that in the code also here. So depending if the metadata section exists in the base application or not, the private methods change. So let me go back to my base application. So here, this is in my base application. let me go ahead and run this. So if I run this in preview mode, you will notice that I don't have a metadata section. So I've commented out the metadata section right here. So there is no metadata section. And because there is no metadata section, so all the methods that start with the underscore, on, init, or exit, they're all considered as private methods, as you can see in this code right here. So if I uh, go into the debugging tools, you can see that in the controller metadata file, you can see that if there is metadata section and if there are methods that are associated in the metadata section, then this is the private check. So anything that starts with underscore, on, init, or exit. And because we don't have the metadata section, so these methods, the on method, this is considered private to the base application. And then the underscore also is considered private to this base application. And also any application that starts with init or exit would also be considered as private. But this is where I don't know if this is a bug or not. But the minute I add a metadata section. So in this case, I'm going to add a metadata section. And what I really want to do is I told you that the override execution, the default is instead. So I want to change it to after for this public method right here. But now the minute I add this metadata section, now uh, private methods change as well, because now there is a metadata section. Only methods that start with underscore is considered private. So I don't know if this is a bug or not, because just the fact that I added this metadata section now changes the behavior of what the private methods are. So let me go ahead and deploy this to SAP S/4HANA as well. And oh, I didn't mean to run it. So let me go ahead and deploy it. I wanted to deploy it. npm run deploy, and I will go ahead and deploy this. And let me go back to my extension application this time. So in my extension application now, so what I have is I have the public method here, the on method as well. Because now I have a metadata section, what it's going to do now is this is no longer considered a private method on the base application, and this will run now for me. So if I go ahead and let me close this here as well, let me run the extension application one more time. So now in my extension application, the public method will run with the strategy of after, I believe. So that's what I have. So if I go into my console here, I can remove this breakpoint. Let me clear the log. So in the base button, when I click on the base button right here, let me go ahead and run it. You will see that the base public method gets run and then the extension, because we changed the strategy to after. So that makes sense. Now the base public method also gets run, and then the extension public method runs after the base. So before it was instead, because we didn't have the metadata section at all. With the introduction of the metadata section, now we have the after strategy. But the key thing here in the base button, when I click on the base method, now the extension method runs, because this is instead. But it's no longer considered private. But the underscore method still is private, so the base private method gets run. So this is the behavior as of now. So I don't know if this is a bug or not, because just introducing the metadata section seems to change which one is a private method and which one is not a private method. Okay, so now before you start a extension project, let's say you're going to extend a custom freestyle Fiori application. So in this case, I've taken the example of create maintenance request. So this is a SAP UI5 custom freestyle application, and I want to extend it. So before you do that, what you want to do is you want to go into your SAP logon and go ahead and open up the SC80 transaction code. So go ahead and log into, let me log into my SAP logon and go into SC80. And once you go into SC80, then what you can do is you can also choose the BSP application. And this name of this application, create maintenance request, you can get this from the SAP Fiori apps library. So go into SAP Fiori apps library and get all the details about the application itself. So once you go here, you can search for create maintenance requests and create a table something like this. So you can get all this from the configuration details of the SAP S4 in the Fiori apps library. So you can say create maintenance requests. And then you can select your create maintenance request app. You can go into the implementation information or go into the configuration tab, and here you can get all this information, right? So the technical name, definitely make note of this, and then come into the SC80 and go ahead and put this thing here and search. And what it will give you is it will give you the code for this application. So this is the base application. So you have the code for this application. Now the only problem is this code is in minified format, but no worries, you can still make sense of it. So copy this code, and what you want to do is in your Visual Studio Code or someplace, go ahead and copy and paste this code. So here I already have it pasted, but go ahead and paste this code. Obviously, this doesn't make sense because it's minified, but what you can do is you can go ahead and format it. So you can do Control H and you can remove all these. So there are a couple of things that you need to do. So remove these space right here to the left side. So I'm going to remove all of those spaces. And then on the very right, you can see there's a plus and a carriage return. So put what you also want to do is remove on the right side the plus and the carriage return. So go ahead and replace all of that. So now you have the code all like you've cleared all the white spaces and so on. Now you can do a simple format document, and this is going to give you the code, but it's still minified version, but at least you can have a look at the code. You can see here in this code for this application at least that there is no metadata section. So we know if there is no metadata section, that means the private methods are like this. So anything with underscore on, init, and exit, they are considered private. So all these methods here that starts with on, they're all going to be private because there is no metadata section in this application. So let's go back to our application itself right here. And let's say I want to let me go ahead and run this application. So for this, I have the extension application already created for this create maintenance request app. So let me go ahead and open that folder. So create maintenance request variant. So let me go ahead and open this. So let's say I want to run this, and I want to go ahead and do something before save. So let me see how I can run this. So if I go in here and I can click on right click, adaptation project, open preview. So this is my create maintenance request extension app. Creating the extension app is fairly straightforward. So I've done a video on this before. So if you have trouble creating an extension app, just look at the video that I had created before. Okay, so this is my extension app coming up. And right now, all I have is I have console logs, and I also have this method that gives me all the public methods that are available. And we know that anything with that starts with on, they all get filtered out. So here, if I go to my F12. If you look at the public methods, so these are the public methods that are available. Now, what I really want to do is before I hit submit, let's say I want to do some custom code before I hit this submit, right? Like when I hit the submit, I want some custom validation or some kind of a message box to show up. So how do I override this submit method, or how do I hook into this submit method? So if I look in my code, there is a method called onPressSave. And so this is the method that gets run when I hit the submit button. But because this starts with on, this is considered private on the base application because there's no metadata section right here. So the developers have not extended this because there's no metadata section. Anything that starts with on is considered private. So if you simply go to your extension application, and in your overrides section, if you did on press save something like this, this is not going to work because on press is going to be considered private on the base application. So this will not work on the extension application. So how do we extend this application? So there's no really a proper way of doing this. So there are a couple of alternate ways in which you can do it. One way is what you can do is because this is a UI5 adaptation project, what you can do is you can remove this submit button by going into the adapt UI and then creating a new button right here instead. And with the new button, you pretty much can have a event handler, and in the event handler you can go ahead and copy and paste this code, the on press save code right here. So whatever is in the on press save code, you can copy and paste this here. Now, a couple of drawbacks in this approach is that you can see that this code is minified code. So copying and pasting this code is going to be not readable, right? So definitely that is not a good sign. What we really need is the application to have the non-minified code here, which it doesn't. But copying and pasting this code is very hacky, but this is one of the options. The other drawback is this is in the base application is different from this in the extension application. So when you copy and paste this code in your extension application, you also have to make sure that this refers to this in the extension application. So a couple of issues with this approach. So one is you get the minified code, and then you also lose the reference to this. So you need to make sure that you are referring to the proper this. The other approach is using the prototype approach. So in this case, what I have done is in my extension application, so I have this code here that I'm going to go ahead and gray out, comment it out. Let me go ahead and deploy this app as well. Go ahead and deploy this app. So you can choose the destination to deploy it, say update, and then go ahead and deploy it. So the project is now deployed successfully. So this is the line of code. So basically you're making a copy, a shallow copy of the prototype, and then you're just extending, you're attaching this function to this on press save, and here you're doing whatever custom logic you want to do, and then if you want to call the base method, you can call the base method as well. So this is one another way of extending the private methods. Again, this is only if you have to do it. If you don't have to do it, that's well and good. Uh, but uh, but these are both these options. I don't really like it, but that's all we have at this moment, I think, unless SAP comes up with a better way of extending methods. Because as we saw, the base application doesn't have this metadata section, and because there's no metadata section, everything that starts with on underscore init or exit, they're all considered private on the base application. Again, I don't know whether this is a bug or not, because just introducing the metadata section seems to change the visibility of the methods as well. So to me, I think that is also a bug. Okay, so now with this prototype approach, when you hit the submit button, then what it's going to do is this is going to get called first, and then the on press save. So if I run this application now, and I go into the debug mode right here, let me clear the log. I'll put a description. This is a test, and I hit submit. You will see that the extension custom logic got called, and then it's trying to deploy it, save it, but then the save failed, but that's okay. But our extension logic gets called, and then the on press save from the base application was called as well. Okay, so this is how you can extend methods in the extension application. If it's a public method, then you can simply extend it just by doing this in the override section. So there is a method called load draft. In the load draft, if you want to extend it, then you can simply put it in the overrides section like this. Again, the default strategy is instead. So if you added load draft, so this will run instead of the base load draft. Because there is no metadata section, the default behavior is instead. Okay, thanks everyone.